Hi there, Ben Mankiewicz with you on TCM. We just had a short documentary on the life and work of producer Roger Corman. Now it's time to dig into the films made by the prolific independent movie mogul. Up first, a dark comedy about beatniks and scenesters with a little murder mixed in. From American International Pictures in 1959, directed by Corman himself, A Bucket of Blood. 10 years ago, I was delighted to co-host A Bucket of Blood with Roger, who joined me for a spotlight on movies released by AIP, where he spent much of his career. In this clip from our conversation, we discuss his highly descriptive film titles and how he came up with his particular brand of horror comedy. After the clip, we'll have the film starring a member of Roger Corman's stock company of actors, Dick Miller. Hi there, I'm Ben Mankiewicz. Welcome back to TCM's month-long spotlight on American International Pictures. And returning to the seat on my left, one of the key figures in AIP's storied history. Really, I think the key figure. Honorary Academy Award recipient, Roger Corman. Roger, welcome back.
Happy to be here.
Up next, a black comedy horror film about a young, unassuming busboy at a bohemian cafe who'd love to be an artist. Sadly, he lacks the talent for art, but he does show some creative ingenuity for murder. From 1959, directed by Roger Corman, A Bucket of Blood. Not a subtle title, Roger?
Some of the titles came from me and some came from Jim Nicholson, who was the head of the production department at American International.
You guys didn't spend a lot of time trying to be clever with titles. You wanted people to know right away, if not the story, at least what kind of movie they were getting, right?
That and one other thing.
What's that?
The title had to help sell the picture. I remember about that time, Paul Newman made a picture called HUD. And somebody was talking to me about titles. And I said, you can call a picture HUD if you have Paul Newman, but there's no way I can make a picture called HUD and expect it to do any business.
So the story of A Bucket of Blood, first of all, you directed it. This is 1959. The other movies we showed tonight were from 54 and 55. This is 4 years later. Now you're not only producing, but you're directing. How many movies had you directed up until this point?
I don't remember exactly, maybe 10, 11, something like that.
Of course, 10, 11, that's in like 3 or 4 years, right?
Yes.
What was a standard year for you? How many movies you make in a year?
I was making 4 or 5, producing and directing 4 or 5 films a year. One year I directed 6 films in a year. I was shooting 1 film during the day, casting the next picture during my lunch hour, and editing the previous film in the evening. And I remember going to bed one night and saying to myself, I have to sleep fast. And I thought, I'm a little out of control here. I'm going to slow down slightly.
Just to 4 or 5 a year?
Exactly.
Where did the story of A Bucket of Blood come from?
The story of A Bucket of Blood came from, to me at any rate, a rather interesting source. One of my Poe pictures was having a sneak preview, and I was in the audience watching it, and it was playing very well. And there was a suspense scene where, I forgot, it might have been Vincent Price, walking down a corridor, and I had a technique of dollying back with him on his face and then dollying forward, point of view, and then cutaways to things like a cobweb, a spider, and so forth. And at the end, a door would open and everything would build and something would come out straight at the camera. And if I did it right, the audience would scream. It worked perfectly. The audience screamed. And then after they screamed, they laughed. And I thought, what did I do wrong here? And I thought, I didn't do anything wrong. I got the scream I wanted. I think it was a laugh, the sort of semi-appreciation. The audience realized that they'd been had a little bit, if you know what I mean. And from that, I got the idea of putting together horror and comedy. And from that, I did A Bucket of Blood, which I shot in 5 days because I wasn't certain that it would work.
Compared to the other movies we saw tonight, Fast and the Furious and The Beast with a Million Eyes, Bucket of Blood is more sophisticated. But how much more money? What was the budget on A Bucket of Blood?
Actually, I went back to a lower budget because I wasn't certain that the idea of combining comedy with horror would work. So I think I was back to about a $40,000 to $50,000 budget on that.
Wow, amazing. Let's take a look at it from 1959, starring a Roger Corman regular, character actor Dick Miller. Here is Roger Corman's A Bucket of Blood. Charles B. Griffith wrote the screenplay for A Bucket of Blood, and it's hard to overstate just how important Griffith was as a collaborator to Roger Corman, who produced and directed the film. Corman directed roughly 50 movies. How many did he produce? That's actually hard to say. He's not always credited as a producer when he did the job. The number is certainly well over 300, probably closer to 400, maybe above that. Back to Charles Griffith. He often turned Corman's one-sentence ideas into full-blown scripts filled with satirical and subversive humor. Griffith first wrote westerns for Corman, but he proved he could tackle horror, sci-fi, juvenile delinquent pictures, anything Roger Corman threw his way. Although Griffith contributed to an early draft for Jane Fonda's 1968 sexy sci-fi adventure Barbarella, he rarely worked for anyone other than Roger Corman. I was lazy, Griffith later admitted. Instead of trying to write an A picture and sell it on the market, I'd just go back and get another assignment from Roger. Filmmaker Quentin Tarantino has cited Griffith as an important influence on his work and dedicated his 2007 Grindhouse-inspired flick Death Proof to Griffith. In this clip from 2016, as Roger co-hosted A Bucket of Blood with me on TCM, we talk about not only all the filmmakers whose careers Roger helped launch, but also his stock company of actors and crew members.
Hey there, welcome back. I'm here with my co-host for TCM's Spotlight on American International Pictures, the director of A Bucket of Blood, Roger Corman. Roger, welcome back.
Happy to be here.
Listening to all these people whose careers you helped launch, Martin Scorsese, Francis Ford Coppola, Jack Nicholson, David Carradine, Joe Dante, Jonathan Demme, Peter Bogdanovich, Ron Howard, they all talk about you as a rebel, which is always funny because you don't look like a rebel and you didn't look like a rebel then either. But there is something that you even see here in A Bucket of Blood that is thumbing your nose at the establishment, even if that establishment is, in this case, a rebellious establishment, the beatnik bohemian culture. You are mocking the pretension of these people who think they really understand art. And that was very intentional, right?
Yes, that was a deliberate choice. We, I say, Chuck Griffith, who wrote the script, various of the actors, we were part of the beatnik culture, but I never took it quite that seriously. So I thought it would be fun to sort of spoof our own culture.
John Ford is famous for having the same repertory players that he used in movie after movie. But you did much the same thing. There were Roger Corman players, and the star here, Dick Miller, was definitely one of them.
Yes, Dick Miller, Jack Nicholson, Jonathan Hayes, a number of guys that we all worked together for many years.
Why was that? Was it just because they worked cheaply, or you developed a comfort level with them?
It was the fact that they were good. Every one of them, particularly Jack, was a very talented actor. We were young, we were friends, and I always believed, both with the crew and with the cast, anybody who had done a good job on one picture, I tried to bring back for the next. So over a period of years, the crew became very good because I would drop anybody who wasn't that good, bring somebody in. So eventually I had a really super efficient crew, and to a certain extent the same thing with the actors. Matter of fact, I should mention the crew. It was known as the Corman crew. When they weren't working with me, normally an independent producer just hires people, individuals. They would just hire the entire crew, and there was a camaraderie within the crew.
That was B-movie maestro Roger Corman on TCM back in 2016. Coming up, what may be Corman's best-known film. From 1960, The Little Shop of Horrors, is next on TCM.
Next on TCM, The Little Shop of Horrors, then Teenage Doll, and later, 5 Guns West. Roger Corman's got your number tonight.